Thank you, Annette. I want to welcome everyone attending here. I am Ann Kilby. I will be your worship leader today. And my colleague in this service, John Schaefer, I will introduce later. One little housekeeping thing, please, for those here in person, maintain masking and social distancing. I want to welcome also everyone who's attending on Zoom. We're very glad that all of you are here either way. I want to acknowledge that our fellowship home here is in the unceded home place of the Wiyot people. They tended this spot and these lands over millennia with love, also intelligently and diligently. We aspire to learn to steward our fellowship setting someday as well as the Wiyot people did. We offer an open-minded and open-hearted spiritual home here, welcoming everyone who values accepting all people and caring for all life on earth. Now I will invite the bell. In order to continue from being a gathering to being a fellowship holding a sacred service, we open sacred space. Today we do so by first settling and focusing as we did with Annette's beautiful music, then by lighting our chalice. And with these words, I am truth beyond reason. I am knowing beyond thought. I am grace beyond effort. I am strength beyond force. I am love beyond all expectation. I am peace beyond time. I am love in motion. I am life divine. And the last part, which is the most important, is now by each lending our attention and companionship to us all as we journey through our service, we maintain our sacred focus. Whether you are joining us via Zoom or attending in person, all of you, by giving your presence, contribute to us all throughout our service. Next, we enjoy each week renewing our fellowship's aspiration together out loud. You will find it printed in your order of service. May love be the spirit of this fellowship. May the quest for truth be its sacrament and service be its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, and to help one another in fellowship. This is our aspiration. Next, I have an extremely brief reading to offer. It's not really a reading, it's just a comment which they say in what used to be called Asia Minor in India and all of that cultural area. Sarva Mangalam. May all be auspicious. Now, with our choir director, Elisabeth Harrington, directing us, a fraction of the choir, including, as you see, myself, will sing in to you from the foyer. This is the time we refer to as the time for all ages, in this case, the story for all ages. And I'm glad to see that we do have all ages represented here, but I want everybody over the age of 10 to understand that this is for us too. This book is called Every Breath We Take, a book about air. It's by Maya Ajmera and Dominique Browning, and it is published by Charles Bridge Press. It's mostly good pictures, but there's a beginning here, a couple of paragraphs. If I told you that everybody in the world shares one invisible thing that keeps us all alive, would you believe me? If I told you that that thing is inside of us and outside of us at the same time, would you think I was crazy? Maybe. Or maybe you would know that I was talking about air. Air is everywhere, inside and outside. Every breath we take is full of air. Every single person on earth, no matter where he comes from or what she looks like, needs clean air. Air keeps us alive. And cute. When a baby is born, he fills his lungs with air. When a baby screams, she pushes air out. You can feel air going into your lungs too. They are like balloons. You can hug yourself and feel the air moving in and out. Every creature, big or small, needs clean air. Elephants, grasshoppers, dogs, turtles, and monkeys all need clean air. Grass, flowers, trees, and vegetables need clean air to grow. Clean air is invisible, but you know it's there. You can see air coming out of your mouth on a freezing cold day. You can see air moving the leaves on trees or moving bubbles everywhere. You can feel the air on your skin. It can feel warm or it can make you shiver. Breezes can be so gentle that they rock you to sleep. Storm gales can be so strong that they blow down trees. Wind is moving air. Butterflies, dragonflies, birds, and airplanes ride on the wind. So do hot air balloons and dandelion puffs. Kisses fly on the wind when you blow them to someone you love. Air carries sounds. It carries lullabies at bedtime and songs sung out loud. It carries the sound of birds chirping and of thunder rumbling when it rains. Air carries smells too. I won't even show you these chocolate chip cookies. Dirty air can make us sick. Sometimes it can be hard to breathe. We have rules about air pollution, and dirty air can be cleaned up. There are many ways to keep our air clean. We can turn on the lights and heat our homes with clean energy from wind or the sun. We can drive cars that don't pollute and ride bikes more often, and we can always walk. Every breath we take should be full of clean air. Clean air is like love. It's invisible, but it makes life better. Now, while Annette plays for us our song, our traditional song, Go Now in Peace, we will hum the children out now to go to Ari. Thank you, Annette. We intend that every person who joins us for service feels recognized and held among us. And one way we create this is by honoring any joys or concerns we carry in our hearts. If you wish to share, you may come forward and take a pebble or several from the bowl on the windowsill. Then step to this microphone, lower your mask, tell us your name, and briefly share your personal joy or concern. Then drop your pebble or pebbles into the water in the bowl there. The ripples demonstrate how our caring and prayers move out from us into the world to touch others. Please keep in mind, this is not a time for announcements, but a chance to share from your heart and be held lovingly among us. You may choose to drop one or more pebbles without speaking, just taking a few moments with your thoughts or prayers. Once again, take one or more pebbles, share orally if you wish, then drop your pebble or pebbles in the bowl. After we've finished in person here, Scarlett will share the joys and concerns from the Zoom audience.
should have known. And this pebble I'm dropping is for the people who don't have something because they haven't stocked up in their house. So we have a jumble in our house. And the neighbors down the street are having a big sale on all the jumble they had too. But what I brought and is in my car today is an ankle elastic. And it's free and it's nice and clean. There's 2 of them. And I bring something each time for people who don't have it. Sorry, could you hear what I said? Yeah. Okay, thanks.
I'm Debbie, and this is wishing Pat McCutcheon a happy birthday, 75.
Hi, good morning. My name is Libby, and this morning I'm dropping a stone of sorrow for Clint Rebick, who was our longtime registrar at Humboldt State University. He passed about a week and a half ago to esophageal cancer. It was a surprise to most of us in the community. If you knew Clint, he was a person who spread joy and love in every interaction, and he was a fierce advocate for students. He will be so very missed.
Good morning. My name's Joanne. These days I'm going by Greta. I'm dropping my blue marble as I first dropped years ago at our first climate service. And I have a lot of exhaustion and sadness these days, both for the state of the world and for my personal issues. And I just really am grateful to have this opportunity to share with you this blue marble and my thoughts.
Hello, I'm Chip, and I drop a pebble of gratitude for Laura Bussey helping us to display our banners, the Black Lives Matter banner and the new climate action banner representing HUUF. This is a pebble for people who've been paying close attention to what happened in Glasgow. So it's for those people very disappointed by what happened, and for those people who are feeling very hopeful about where this may lead us. And this last pebble is in honor of my grandson, Sebastian. Sebastian was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis when he was an infant, and he is now 31, soon be 32. Just a few years ago, he designed a sweatshirt with the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation rose logo from the child who couldn't pronounce cystic fibrosis or heard it differently and reported, I have 65 roses. But anyway, the sweatshirt that Sebastian designed, on the back of it says, every breath of blessing.
I just want to drop this pebble of appreciation. Folks in the Climate Action Campaign group got up the idea and then actually have gotten a banner. And in fact, you will see on the bulletin board out there or in this last Sunday's Times Standard on the front page, some of our folks who attended the demonstration.
Hi, I'm Scarlett Tripp-Smith. I am the technical coordinator here at HUUF, and I will be sharing the Zoom joys and sorrows for you all here. From Sarah, a joy for my daughter, Lydia, who is turning 15 on Wednesday. From Tracy Jordan, a pebble of sorrow for the devastating loss of my dear friend, Clint Rebick. And a pebble of support for my sister Beth, who is battling an aggressive form of cancer. From Kathy, my concern is for my 15-and-a-half-year-old kitty cat, Luna, who has been diagnosed with cancer and has started to fade. My joy is for my son, whose 3rd birthday was yesterday. All right. And joy and sorrow for all the, or a pebble for all the joys and sorrows that we keep near and dear to our hearts in this time of chaos and new beginnings and all and beyond.
Now I'd like to introduce, for those who don't already know, John Schaefer, very active climate action campaign member and longtime fellowship member, who is going to make our presentation. Greta and MIT come to HUUF.
This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words. And yet, I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you? For more than 30 years, the science has been crystal clear.
Because if you
How
really
dare you continue to look away
and still kept on
and
failing,
come here saying that you're doing enough when the politics and solutions needed are still nowhere in sight. You say you hear us and that you understand the urgency. But no matter how sad and angry I am, I do not want to believe that. Because if you really understood the situation and still kept on failing to act, then you would be evil, and that I refuse to believe.
Well, Greta speaks my mind.
Don't let AT&T...
I believe this is actually
The most serious crisis we face on the planet, not just here at HUUF or in California, but throughout the whole world. Once upon a time, I had hoped that this crisis might bring us all together. I guess you see that was a naive hope on my part. So what's the evidence? Are we winning against the climate crisis? We're at 1.2 degrees Celsius temperature rise now with an unprecedented rate of growth and way past 400 parts per million of CO2. More important than those numbers are the damages, which are already beyond what we should accept, I believe. 1.5 degrees will be worse. Can we even hold the rise to 1.5 degrees as they hope we can do in Glasgow? How about 2 degrees? Well, stay tuned. We're going to figure that out this morning, and you get to decide where we go. It's not just numbers like degrees and parts per million, which we can measure in the past and calculate for the future. It's also about damage and fear and personal loss. My own son and family lost their home a year ago in Santa Rosa from the glass fire. All they salvaged was what they carried in go bags. It didn't help that they were used to carrying go bags out the door with them. It was still traumatic. Other friends of mine have lost homes in Trinity and Shasta counties. So I conclude, so far, we're losing against the climate crisis. It's scarier than nuclear war to me, because nuclear war may or may not happen, but right now, the climate crisis is for sure. There are solutions. So what we're going to do is look for solutions so we can tell lawmakers exactly what we want them to do, not just degrees or tons or dollars like they argued about in Glasgow, but actual policies that work in the real world. So evaluating policies is a complicated computational challenge combining physics and engineering and economics. Some policies are more effective than others. Which ones are they? Should we electrify everything, expand renewables, cut methane, insulate houses, electric cars? Here's a way to compare those policies, combining MIT's best science, engineering, and economics. Now, let's see if I can get this to play on the screen. All right, this is a kind of a complicated screen, so let me break it down into pieces. In the upper right-hand corner, the upper right-hand corner is up there. What we see is a result of the policies that are in place now for a business as usual scenario. What I'm going to try to do is display some different outputs. This is greenhouse gas net emissions. Not very meaningful. We can't see that in the air being invisible. So let's see if I can pull up something more useful. Yep. Here we see temperature change, and the horizontal scale is years. Over on the far left is the year 2000. The far right is the year 2100. And you see as we now appear to be moving, this is going to rise to a value that nobody can read up there except me when I get up close to the screen. Right now, we're at 1.2 degrees. If we keep going, it's going to be 3.6 degrees. The temperature rise will be 3 times greater than what we're seeing now. What we're seeing now is disaster all over the world. So 3.6 will be considerably worse. So that's the measure of the policies we're about to embark upon. Now take a look in the upper left-hand corner. Up here, you'll see, you folks in the audience can see it. Those of you in Zoom land will have to use your imagination. Upper left-hand corner, you'll see a polychromatic graph of the different sources of energy that we're using in the world. The bottom brown colored stripe shows usage of coal beginning in the year 2000 and out to the year 2100. Red is oil. Moving above that is blue, and that's natural gas. The green is good. What we all want to see more of, that's renewable energy. Now, let's take a look at some of the policies which are down below. Wish I could make that go away. Oh. It's a little bit in the way. All right, we'll have to make do. Down in the lower half of the screen, you'll see there are options that we can choose that may or may not help us escape from this terrible trap. So I'm going to illustrate by cutting down the use of coal. And you'll see what happens is that in the upper left, the coal stripe is much lower than it was. Here's coal, year 2000, year 2100. We hear about energy efficiency. How about let's make buildings and industry energy efficiency more greater. How's that? We can do that by sliding this little slider over. And the result of all that is, in terms of temperature rise, is only 3.1 degrees. So we've got lots of other options. And I'm going to ask you, now it's I've been playing with this. I'm going to ask you which of these options you think will be useful. Over on the left, there's energy supply. In the middle, there's efficiency as measured transport and buildings and industry. And this nasty thing here, which I have no idea how to get rid of.
You click on the minus sign on the left side, it'll go away.
All right, this is a group effort. Thank you. Okay, that's more complete. You'll notice now I have transport here. We can mess with transport. We can mess around with buildings and industry. We can look at population growth, economic growth. We can look at over here on the right at land and industry emissions, even carbon removal from the atmosphere. Okay. Dear friends, please offer your suggestions.
Can we reduce deforestation?
Can we reduce deforestation? She asks. What a marvelous idea. Thinking about, let's say, the Amazon. And I can do that by sliding this slider over to the left. Oh, didn't help much. So look at that. We got a tenth of a degree for that. Everybody who lives in the Amazon feels better, that's for sure. Transportation. What would you like to do in transportation? Let's see. In transportation, the options are energy efficiency and electrification. Energy efficiency. Let's have more efficient cars. That helps a lot. Now, what do I mean by highly increased efficiency? We can click up here and see numerically what that actually means. energy efficiency of new transportation increases by 4.7% per year. So that is to say, our gas mileage increases by about 5% a year, every year, starting in 2021. So that helps. Transportation is a big energy sucker. I'm going to click that off. Ask, does anyone have anybody? Joanna.
We know that electric vehicles are going to very soon take over and pricing of gas-powered vehicles. So I think we, in like 2035, all the new cars are going to have to be electric. So we should really should that.
Thank you. That suggestion is let's look at all electric vehicles and see how we can do in that regard. So here's a slider for transport electrification. I'm going to make it much more efficient than, or make it electric. And specifically, by 2100, 97% of the vehicles will be electric. Well, did it help much? No. No. Why not? The energy that charges our electric cars has to come from somewhere. Let's look and see where it came from. In the upper left-hand corner, you see that there's still a lot of red, there's still a lot of blue. So the energy charging the cars, it's more efficient if we're using electric cars, but all that energy still comes from fossil fuel. All right. Thank you, Joanna. Let's try increased renewables. Highly subsidized renewables. If we look up in the left-hand corner, you see there's still coal, there's still oil, and still gas. All right, let's get rid of fossil fuels. How might we do that?
We actually have to increase the non-fossil fuel, the alternative energy. So I'm wondering if this graph shows that, like if you do increase the renewable energy, does it automatically decrease the fossil fuels?
Let's try this slider and see. We'll move it back to where it was. And the difference is not very much. So the answer to your question, Margie, is not so far. We've got to think of something different.
The carbon capture that's starting to be developed. Can you lower your map, please? The carbon capture.
Carbon capture is suggested. That's over in the right-hand corner. And I would point out that carbon capture so far is an untested technology, but let's see what happens if we can do that. MIT is looking ahead and saying, if we could get carbon capture working, how would that help us? So let's slide this one over, look and see. It helps some, it helps some. And remember, this is pie in the sky, carbon capture. By 2100, they'll figure it out maybe, but so far they haven't.
Greenland has some Greenland has some techniques.
Iceland does. Iceland does, yeah. They have a particular geological situation there that they can take advantage of. We don't have that here. All right, something I'm going to ask Margie. Yeah.
Try carbon pricing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Let's see what carbon pricing does for us. All right, people have talked in Glasgow about 1.5 degrees. There's no way we can get to 1.5 degrees without carbon pricing. And this shows 1.6 degrees, so we're getting in the ballpark. You know, tenths of degrees one way or the other probably aren't very important. Colleen.
Could you describe carbon pricing for us, Don?
All right, I'd be happy to do that. It's almost as if I set this up. The detail of this carbon price, you're looking for good news, but this isn't it. The carbon price that will get us to 1.6 degrees with all those other policies in place is $249 per ton of carbon dioxide. That's pretty high. In California right now, the cap and trade program is at $17 per ton. So we have a long ways to go. $250 per ton is about $21 or $22 per gallon of gasoline. So that's the future we're looking for that might work. And
we only have to reduce our emissions by 50% by 2030. So can we put that in? And that is 45% of our emissions are fossil fuels. So if we get rid of fossil fuels, we're almost there.
Okay. Joanna suggested we need to get rid of fossil fuels, and we need to do it sooner than this graph shows. What you're saying in 2030, this is 2030, and this shows the distribution of energy supply in the year 2030. Still a lot of oil, still a lot of natural gas, still some coal.
8% a year.
I can put some sliders over and see what happens. We already have a high carbon price, so that affects the oil, certainly affects the natural gas. It doesn't affect much on the outcome. So the bottom line is that with a carbon price as we've proposed it here, pretty high carbon price, and it's going to be $250 a ton by 2030. This is the best we can do. So that's the news. One more. Oh gosh. Okay, two more. Joanne.
The elephant in the room, population. That's what I.
Good question. Thank you. Well, let's take a look at population. Helps a little. How about economic growth? You know, we're running on economic growth, certainly in the rich world. What would happen if we cut that down? A little bit. So I guess my point, we can't solve the problem now, but we at least now have some idea of the difficulty of making all this stuff happen. And I would point out that it's not one thing or another. It's everything that we have to do. Chip.
See what a carbon is around 125 or 150 per ton.
Good question, because of course the fossil fuel companies are not going to want to pay that kind of a price. That's about halfway. And I think the biggie, as Joanna Welch suggests, is oil. The carbon price now at $125 a ton, more or less, is sufficient to move us away from fossil fuels as fast as we can. Well, okay. This has been kind of quantitative with engineering and physics and all that. I think what I'm going to do is shut off. Good. All right, thank you. All right, so it really comes down to a question of whether we're willing to pay more for our fuel, a lot more. So that's one possible bright future. And there is another future, not so bright. We look out the windows to the east. You can't see it today, but we have this beautiful valley out there. I believe that if we don't take all these actions that we've described here in En-ROADS, we can look forward to seeing fire coming down the valley, just leaving blackened snags behind, like we found at my son's house in Santa Rosa. Okay. Yep. Well, we've pretty well demonstrated for decades that we can't expect individuals to solve this problem. We're going to have to insist that government create laws and regulations that basically coerce everybody to do what's right. Otherwise, not enough people will do it. The governments haven't coerced us yet. They're afraid. They've made promises about 1.5 degrees, and maybe if we could get the whole world on board, starting right now with all these policies, we could get to 1.5, but not without a full court press. So what I'd like to do now is show you Greta once again. Shall I try this or? Let's see if. I'm going to leave the meeting and go to. Aha. Here she is. Oops, do I plug this in, Scarlett?
No.
Some expensive, politically correct green and there is no planet B. There is no planet blah.
When I was about
Blah, blah,
8
blah,
years
blah,
old,
blah, blah.
I first heard about something called climate change or global warming.
This is not about some
Apparently that was
expensive,
something
politically
humans had
correct
created
green act
by our
money
way of
again,
living.
or blah, blah, blah.
I was told to turn off the lights, to save energy, and to
Net zero by 2050, blah, blah, blah. Net zero, blah, blah, blah. Climate neutral, blah, blah, blah. This is all we hear from our so-called leaders. Words that sound great, but so far has led to no action. Our hopes and dreams drown in their empty words and promises. Of course, we need constructive dialogue, but they've now had 30 years of blah, 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 and where has that led us? What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it?
Okay. Two observations now about Greta. Bless her heart. First, she doesn't have the answer. Listen to what she said and what she didn't say. She offers no concrete actions or policies, only words. Well, I forgive her for criticizing blah, blah, blah with more blah, blah, blah. That's what they did. To repeat, that's what they did at COP, says Joanna Welch. So now it's time for the so-called grown-ups to take responsibility. I'd like to think that California might lead the country and the world, but at the state level, so far, hardly any legislation has passed of any value. Our hope now is to tell these guys, and it's mostly guys in the law, among the lawmakers who are oblivious, mostly these guys need to hear from us the right policies based on science. Time's up, and instead of just words, we desperately need stronger policies. Now you know what those policies are, all of them. And pricing, of course, is the key. This is all sounding like bad news, of course. It is bad news. The good news, I think, is that everyone here, even the youngest and even children in this crowd, will survive the climate crisis somehow. We're lucky here, but there are millions of victims now, and there will be more in the future, and they're all moving. So one worthy focus is helping those immigrants to survive better. Well, this is all bad news, as I say, and in the face of bad news, which this is, I confess, for over 20 years now, I vacillated between hope and despair. Hope that the planet might come together and fix all this, and despair that it won't. So for me, focus has been crucial to conquering despair. Over what's now a long life, I find that most often what lifts my spirits and gives me hope are focused journeys and adventures with friends, working towards worthy causes. I've been blessed working in the Peace Corps in El Salvador in the 60s, peak load pricing for electricity in the 70s, solar energy and electric cars in the 80s, and now climate with Citizens Climate Lobby and Sue Mossman. These causes have been really rewarding for me. Sometimes successful, sometimes not, but always uplifting. Now I have a second observation about Greta. Remember the two videos. Remember how angry she was in the first one. And in my opinion, how much happier she was with friends. She says, I really see the value of friendship. Apart from the climate, almost nothing else matters. Me too.
For our offertory today, as is traditional, we're intending that part of the contributions will go to the, the agency, the arm of the National Unitarian Universalist Association that's called the UU at the UN. So I have a very, very short intro written by Sue Mossman that essentially every fall all the UU congregations include a collection for the UU at the UN. And this year, our board has decided that we can split it this time, this week. This is, of course, because we've had lots of other financial concerns. But at any rate, it is now time for the offertory. Of course, Annette will play for us. I need to explain about, let's see, the potential ways of donating. In your order of service, there is a Venmo symbol there if you want to use that for donating. We aren't passing a basket here, but on your way out, there is a basket. For those on Zoom, Pat, refresh my memory. There's a slide. Oh, thank you, thank you. I get stage fright sometimes. There will be a slide, and also it is possible either to send a check or to write a check here. Please make checks to HUUF, HUUF. And we are grateful for all generous gifts. Thank you, Annette. And now we have a solo sung by Elisabeth Harrington to further energize. Very much. Debbie Harrison and Elisabeth Harrington. Now we come to our closing time. We extinguish the chalice, but not hearts. With these words, O thou scatterer of ignorance and darkness, grant strength to each and all. May all beings regard us each with the eye of a friend, and each of us all beings. With the eye of a friend, may every being regard all others. Grant what we need each day in bread and insight. I want to thank you all for attending this service. I know it's run over a bit in time. It reflects, I think, that our hearts are full with especially this subject. Please come again. Please note that as we maintain social distancing, reserving a spot will be essential for seating in person. You can sign up by going to our website, huuf.org, or you can phone our office and our administrator, Bridget Garuti, will help you be placed on the list. Our traditions now include our closing song, which is Go From Here in Peace, Go in Love. Annette will play it for us in a moment. Let us keep our connections warm in our hearts. And we can all connect ethereally, so to speak. Shalom, assalamu alaikum, amen, blessed be, ase, aho.